And integration is underway. And it looks like we are live on YouTube now. Okay. Just make sure. And integration is underway. And pause here as I always do. Go ahead and say hello to everyone. Okay. And then we're going to minimize this window and come on back over. And again, if you have seen this feed actually right now, if you're watching right now, then of course in real time you heard the affirmation. I'm going to repeat myself for the sake of the live feed on YouTube. So I am your host, Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel of Evolve Weekly, and this particular series, which is a 52-week series on how to implement a more perfect union. All right. Some of you joined us last time, or you watched the video at your convenience, and you know that we took a break for the cause to highlight the circumstances of Kevin Strickland. I hope that you have seen the advertisement that I am currently running for the fundraiser, and that you will decide to support, and that you will share this message to others so that we can show Kevin Strickland our solidarity. It is wonderful that he has the prosecutorial team of Missouri, or this particular county. It is also wonderful that he has the backing of the Midwest Innocence Project. But there's nothing like having the support of your fellow ethnic group members, your fellow diasporans, especially considering the nature of his circumstances were brought upon as a direct result of discrimination, and discrimination against yet another Black man. He's been there for 43 years. It's enough. Please help me, help us, help him. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead with the affirmation, and then we'll move forward with surveying the Missouri legislative body. All right. May I further enlarge our collective and individual understanding on the topics that we will discuss, and may I not cause further divide. Let's get it. Okay. Missouri. I think we know generally, but again, this is all about a deeper dive, right? So here we go. Share my screen. All right. For those of you who are new, and then you know that this is how we roll. Excuse me. For those of you who are not new, then you know this is how we roll. For those of you who are new, we organically perform these searches in real time. The intent is to, again, eradicate intimidation as it relates to the field of law, the scope of politics, the school of thought, this academic, subject matter, if you will, that just is so disconnected from everyday life, even though, ironically enough, it governs everyday life, really finitely so in most cases. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's choose the first link because it does appear the most appropriate. It's a .gov for Missouri. Okay. Let's see here. So what we do is we're going to take a tally of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, in some cases, when we survey the websites for the legislature for each state, we find that they have given us a tally. And I find that to be very convenient and a positive element for the purposes of our study. Also included in our study is taking a look at the website and seeing if the website for each state's legislature is user-friendly, and to make recommendations to see what opportunities that can be used and implemented for improvement upon these websites, right? Because the whole goal is to eradicate the disconnect between the public and the legislature that governs us, right? State by state and federally, right? Okay, so let's take a look. Here we see 163 members. This is upfront information. We know we prefer this. Senate, 34 members. Again, it is great that they have this information readily available on the first page. Everything looks neat, looks, the font is not too small. We have seen in my previous sessions, you have seen that some fonts are extremely too small. It's just not realistic, definitely not convenient. Let's see here. I like they have the map, much like other states that we have surveyed thus far. Let's see here, Missouri elects 8 of the total 435 members to the United States House of Representatives. I like this as well. This is the first time that we're noticing that a state legislature promulgates how many delegates, if you will, are serving and representing Missouri at the federal level. That's very important. Some of the other websites you have to actually click around before you get to that information. So I can say, even though I am concerned that Missouri is a red state, I am happy to see that the first page seems to be very user-friendly, okay? And they list all of those 8 representatives right off the bat. That is very important as well, okay? And then they list the 2, Missouri elects 2 of the total 100 members to the United States Senate. You've heard me say before that there are about 500 members, and here we have that, 535 members to the United States House of Representatives. And that's the collective body for all of the 52 states, right? And right now, unfortunately, we still have too high of a majority, percentage-wise, of those representatives serving being Caucasian white men. Now, mind you, not all of these Caucasian white men are on the wrong side of justice, but unfortunately, too many of them are. And where some of them are not, too many even of those who are generally aligned and may represent those who are on the right side of justice, they are extremely susceptible to the peer pressure of their peers. We can call it race, but we know race is relative. Some of you know the history of the term race and the history of the philosophy of thought and this concept of race, right? But we understand what I mean when I say that they are too easily influenced by their particular peers, ethnic wise, right? Or demographic wise, okay? So, all right, now that we have discussed that very briefly, let's go ahead and move forward to the House of Representatives. So we know we have 163. They show us right off the bat who the speaker is. It appears, of course, he appears to be a Caucasian white or white. Some prefer Caucasian, some prefer white. I don't prefer either description, but of course we have those descriptions so that we can understand and have the parameters that are relevant for the purpose of our study. And unfortunately, and fortunately, ethnicity is relevant for the scope of our study, because what I showed you last week, and I'm going to reread a part of Abraham Lincoln's, Thomas Jefferson's letter, because even where I added the quote, the part of the letter that I read during that live session was indeed relevant to the commonsensical logic that he employed to make the assertion that we need to have amendments, revisions, even not just amendments, but maybe a whole overhaul is what is the undertone, and I assert the overtone of Thomas Jefferson's letter as it relates to the Constitution, the laws that govern us, day by day, year by year, decade by decade. And he proposes that 19 years, that, 2 decades, effectually, if nothing has changed and we're still going with the same set of laws, then that is being forced upon the people. That is not a body of laws that for which there is consensus of of society. Okay. That being said, this is why surveying the ethnic makeup of our legislature for state by state and federally is exceedingly important to our study, because we're not represented properly. And I mean we, as the collective melting pot that is the United States, which is full of beautifully diverse cultures, ethnic backgrounds, ages, and gender, right? Because all of these demographics matter. And even to some degree, religion as well, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and see what our makeup is. And then I'll read that letter. Let's see where we're at. Members and committees, hearings, sessions. I'm curious. This session really caught my eye. I must say that just overall, first glance, everything is even visually friendly. The buttons, the options that are made available, we can see the sessions right up front. I like that they have the House Journal, the bill calendar, the truly agreed bills. This is good. This is very, very good. The floor schedule, dates of interest, very, very good. And it's very visually friendly. Let's see. Please leave in the comments if you agree with me or you see anything that I don't presently see. This here chamber message board, I don't think we've seen that on any other website. The House of the 101st General Assembly, first regular session, convened January 6, 2021, will stand adjourned as of midnight, May 30th, 2021, per the Constitution. Now, more specifically, what we've seen with some states is you'll see a very, very small, considerably small font with a notice, or just a denotation rather, because notice I think would be, more like what we're seeing here, but a denotation, session ended this date, right? We saw that with, I believe we were looking at Hawaii, and they had just that that Latin term for the session being having been ended, right? That they had adjourned. Okay. All right. So let's just really quickly, because this is interesting. Is it going to play something here? All right. I hit play. I don't see anything. Maybe it's not playing because, well, it should play. Video. Okay, no. Oh, because of course there are no live webcasts. So you would actually, okay, so that is awesome. I'm glad I did take a moment before we counted the Democrats versus the Republicans and take a look at the things that were kind of immediately appealing to me on this website. This is awesome. They have it set up where you immediately can access the live session directly from each site. So I'm presuming, let's go back. I'm presuming that the Senate also has it, because it wouldn't make sense for it not to be. Let's see. And it is interesting how we keep finding that the website for the House of Representatives is evidently handled by, maybe someone that they have agreed to serve in that capacity, as the website manager. And then they have someone separate handle the Senate website. I'm thinking that maybe they need to be on the same page, because the Senate website for Missouri is considerably less appealing at first glance than the House of Representatives. Tell me if you agree. This doesn't even seem like a site I want to stay on, to be honest, at all. There's something about the colors and everything is visually appealing. It's user friendly. It's set up right. It's organized well. Clearly a lot of thought has gone into it. Not to say that, no thought has gone into the website for the Senate, but clearly the web designer for the House of Representatives has some good experience with not only the logistics of web design, but the psychology behind it as well for your visitors. All right. I'm going to just step over here really quickly. Just visually, it looks as though there's the same majority that, that concerns us, but we're going to look into it further because we're just not going to judge a book by its cover. Let's see. Committees, legislation, hearings. Yeah, so they give access here to the audio. I don't see visual. And for some people like myself, I would prefer to watch it and hear it as opposed to just hear it. Interesting. So right now we're just kind of flipping around. So they've listed, their agenda, their business for the day, if you will, for each session. So it's not bad. It's definitely neat and straightforward, but it's not as appealing. Yeah, definitely not as appealing. So we're going to go ahead and click back. Let's go here. Let's go back to the House of Representatives. Yeah, so I do like this option, that it's immediately available to you. All right, so here we go. Members, we're going to count them up because we know 163, but we don't know the breakdown, right? Okay. All right, so 1, 2, 3. We're going to do start with the Democrats. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 4041. Ooh. Woo. Okay. Good gracious. I do like that they have the breakdown over here, for the counties. This is awesome. Even, as though I don't want to like give any type of positive credit to a Republican or a Republican majority based body, legislative body. I do want to highlight the skill set of the Missouri House of wow. Let's rewind. The Missouri House of Representatives web designer. I mean, this is awesome. This is really great. I think the only thing that I would like, and I think that they have actually accommodated, made an accommodation for that matter as well. Let's see. I was going to say, what I always say, pictures of these individuals. And let's click on, boom, there they are. Boom, there they are. Okay. Whoever did this website, they need to be handling all the websites throughout the entire country. I am jumping the gun a bit because we've only covered about 15 states, but I am really impressed, and I'd like to hear your input as it relates to the user friendliness of this particular website. Okay, so unfortunately, though, we still have a majority Republican, and as we scroll through, we also have a majority of white or Caucasian men serving in office. The issue with that, where someone may say something about the fact that, well, if they're on the right side of justice, then it shouldn't matter. You're absolutely right. However, we do need the legislative bodies to reflect the demographics, and not necessarily equally so, but there need to be a balance. This is not properly balanced. This is imbalanced. We know that we have a lot more diversity in America than what is reflected in these pictures as we scroll through. Now, thankfully, we do see some African Americans here. We got Richard Brown, Lakeisha Bosley, Rasheen Aldridge, and Rasheen looks young. So we're going to take a look at him. Now, keep in mind, as I guide us through this surveying, this study, this taking this deeper dive, I guess I would call it the additional purpose of this is to inspire you to continue looking into the specifics of your state legislative body and other legislative bodies from state to state, and also keep up with those who are representing us at the federal level. Reason being is, I've said this over and over again, if we want sweeping national reform, and we want it to be consistent across the board, then we must also get involved with other states' politics. That's just the truth of the matter. Because there are some states that have gotten really good. They are exceptional at suppressing the diverse vote. And so we who are diverse, we who are progressive, and I mean the literal term progressive, not so much as the partisan, delineation. And we who want that reform, who understand that defunding the police is not some type of attack necessarily against law and order, and instead an assertion against corrupt, a corrupt system that cannot be repaired alone by just, incremental enforcement and justice against rogue cops. We see that it's not a viable, sustainable method. It's almost like the movie, like, what do they say? El Hydra, one is killed and two more emerge. It seems like we're dealing with that type of situation. And it seems like those who are on the wrong side of justice, they scoff and they mock us. Yes, we have the conviction against Chauvin, but how many other rogue cops have now emerged and with enraged levels of anger and discrimination and wanton deceit against beautifully diverse populations throughout the United States? We won't know what the true impact of Chauvin's sentence and his conviction will be on fueling white racist America and their allies for some time. It may not fully show for a few years, because they're also, and I tell you this all the time, they're also those of them that are smart enough, quote unquote, to conceal their true intentions and to infiltrate certain agencies of government and then reveal themselves, through this conspired plan, once they maybe have enough authority and impact, control, and then they unleash their true deceit and plan. So we have to be involved in other states' politics aside from the state of our residence. All right. Okay. And so again, when I highlight certain individuals, the intent is not so much as it's not ageism. It's not this hyper focus on any particular generation, but it is highlighting the importance of seeing younger individuals elected into office, supporting them, letting them know, we know you're there. I may live in North Carolina, but I know you're there serving on the right side of justice in Missouri. Now, there's also a caveat, as I've told you before. Those of us who look like us may not be for us, right? So we have to be very careful. And this is also why we need to be intentional in researching and keeping up with the voting record of African Americans, African American women who would, that would be a reflection of me, African American men who would be a reflection of some of you who are watching, Native American men and women, again, who would be a reflection of you all, whoever's watching, those who are Asian or from a Pacific island, right, or Caribbean, even African, right, even Italian, right? These things are very important, even as it relates to maybe Russia, because again, Asia, Eurasia includes a lot more than what we immediately think of as inhabitants of those areas, right? So it's very important that you know what they're doing, because unfortunately, there are African American women in office right now, who do not have African American women's best interest in mind. And they are on the wrong side of justice. They have been bought. They have been corrupted. They either willingly or succumb to corruption And now their oath of office is just pointless. They're there and we see them and you think, oh, well, she's in office, so I can trust that. I can go ahead and have lunch and be on my merry way and I can trust this. No, you can't just trust that blindly. We have to stay involved. It's our government, we the people, okay? And I said I was going to read that letter. I'm going to read it at the end because it will be more emphatic. I want to close with that letter because it's so important. And right now we're at, because I started a little early. Let me take a look at where we're at. And then we'll go back. I guess it's not going to show me. So let me go to YouTube. Nope, it's not giving me YouTube. Because I try to make sure that we commit to the 1 hour format. It's already a very formal format. Let me go to YouTube. Okay, what is that? Oh, I see. Yeah, because remember, I also look up words during our live sessions, which is very, very important. Arrogance is equivalent to ignorance, right? So we don't ever want to get to the point where we feel like we can stop learning because we know everything. So we look up words, we apply them for, context clues and all that good stuff. So we do that even in real time. All right, so let me come out of that. Okay. Yeah, see, 31 minutes. So we got 30 minutes to go. Yeah, I started about 5 minutes early. Okay, so we're doing well. Okay, let's go back. So I'm going to stop about 10 minutes before to read that letter and re-emphasize the very straightforwardly, commonsensically, indisputably valid points that were made about the application, the enforcement, the revision of our body of laws or the Constitution that governs us, right? Okay, here we go. Let's go back here. Okay, so what did I do here? Let me make sure. All right, so we have our members. Let's see. People. Somebody's paying attention. So this web designer has made it user-friendly for those of us who prefer to look at the name and the picture, the district, telephone number, their office. Boom. You can filter it out. They give you that option. They give you an option to print or to download it in a different format. Sometimes you just need the names. You can print that out with pictures, only pictures, with their title and their partisan designation. It's pretty awesome. The counties, let's see. So then if you move to Missouri and you live in, okay, so Jackson County, if I'm not mistaken, let's make sure before I speak. Jackson County, Missouri. Kevin Strickland. I believe this is where he's at. Is it Jackson County? Yes, so Jackson County. All right, so then let's go back. I wonder, oh, wow, wait, so this is even better. This is even better. Not only does it give the breakdown for each county, if I'm looking at this correctly, it also populates those same 21 individuals, those 21 legislators, so that you can immediately access them. Oh, wow. This is good. This is good. This is good. This is what we need to see. So it's extremely user-friendly for those of us who just feel like, okay, I maybe you don't feel very comfortable on a computer. There are many of us, and there are many of us who have academic degrees, but it may not be related to, a requirement of intermediate or advanced level experience with a computer, right? So maybe you're not that comfortable. Maybe it gives you, anxiety. This lessens that anxiety when you visit. This is awesome. Even for those of us who are, as it relates to the philosophy of thought for the left and right brain, this works for that both, because you have the visual aspect and then you have the, the other aspect, the formal aspect of it all. This is great. All right. So for Jackson County, let's see. Wow, because you can even break down for that particular county and see if it is a majority Democratic county or Republican. Let's just count it up to find out. Okay. So let's start again with the Democrats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow. I think, all right, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, what I'm counting down, it makes sense why this county has been so intentional about correcting the wrongs of the, the discriminatory past, right? All right, so let's see with the Republicans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this particular county is indeed a Democratic majority county. And that makes a lot of sense because they really are going pretty hard, even speaking out against the governor's decision not to pardon Kevin Strickland and, and immediately release him from prison. They have really been outspoken about this particular case. And it makes a lot of sense why. This is very interesting. I'm very impressed with their website. All right, and then we have Yolanda here. This is worth looking into as well. Emily Weber, Michael Johnson. So these individuals look like they might be my age. Yolanda, maybe a bit older. Remember, I'm 44. So, and you just never can tell sometimes, especially with us melanated women. Let's see. So Yolanda, Michael, he looks like he might be my age. Emily looks like she might be my age. Ashley Bland Manlove, Richard Brown, Jerome Barnes. They even have great diversity here. Jonathan Patterson. And sometimes visual diversity does not always translate into that being a positive reflection of a commitment to justice and a commitment to ethics, right? We have seen many times where, and the term normally is whitewashed. We've seen many times where some Asian individuals are whitewashed. So they are less effective to us holistically on task for matters of justice and civil rights, right? Because they think more like the racist Caucasian group that we are trying to completely rid of in American thought and American principles, if you will, right? And unfortunately, the same holds true for some of my beautiful Black diasporan folk. So you just never can tell by pictures alone, but this is very interesting. I believe Robert Sauls might be of Italian descent. This is good stuff. Okay, let's hop over because I can spend a lot of time on this because this is very, very well organized. Let me just go to general info. So they give you current vacancies. This is This is awesome. This is also awesome for those of you who are considering running for office. When I have considered running for office, and this is going to be one of those moments where I am not necessarily taking digs at anyone, but I am going to make very firm recommendations against not being properly informed about the seats that are available, the terms that they serve, the chapter of the statutes that govern that particular seat, for public office. And too often, that's what I see. In the election cycles for which I have been a candidate, too often the candidates are completely uninformed or otherwise insufficiently informed about what chapter of the statutes or the laws for their state governs their office. So what does that mean exactly, Tigers? That means that they don't know what authority they have. They don't know what and to what extent of how they can help the people, because they don't know. They're just running for office because and especially in the cycles that I have participated in, they're running for office because they had a city job. They're at the point of retirement or near retirement. They don't want to work any other job. So they believe that somehow they're grandfathered in or guaranteed this position in politics, much like we see at the federal level for military families, right? And I told you before that the political class is completely made up, right? It is not fiction. It is nonfiction. It is science fiction, in fact. Right? Okay. And so too often, diving into what would this position entail? What would be required of me if I run for office? Considering that we want criminal justice reform, how much impact can I have on criminal justice reform in this position? Instead, they run for office and then they go on this campaign trail and they tell you all these things that they can do. And they give you all this, this pretty lip service and have absolutely no clue what their particular seat, that position that they're running for, they have no clue what the scope of duties and authority are. None. Oftentimes, I've noticed promising things that are not even within their voting authority for that seat. Their seat has absolutely nothing to do with the promises that they continue to lie as far as a falsification, and lie at the feet or lay at the feet of constituents, residents, potential voters who rely upon them as trustworthy, as generally trustworthy, or otherwise believe, okay, well, they have to know because I don't know. I'm just a resident of Charlotte. I don't really know how all the laws work. So even though I don't trust the politicians, all that much, I imagine that they have to know more than me. You would be so appalled by how little they know. And very often the general public knows more than they know. Please understand that. I've held them to the fire by posing questions in my answers to questions posed at political forums, where they do that formal inquiry into each candidate to vet who is the best candidate to vote for. So this is why knowing current vacancies, knowing your statutes, knowing which chapter, which body of the statutes, because I've shown you they're organized by chapter, which applies directly to if you want to run for city council. There's a chapter for that. Tells you what you can do as mayor. Tells you what you can't do as mayor. So if you're going around and you're saying, I'm running for mayor and I'm going to promise the absolute world, that's ridiculous because the mayor has one vote. In some counties, that vote can be a tiebreaker. In other counties, in cities, because that's not a county position, it's a city position. And there's a difference for that as well. I've explained that to you. When you think city, think municipal. When you think county, think county. Okay. So city, municipal, mayor, county, board of commissioners, things of that nature, right? Okay. But in some cities, the mayor's vote is just equivalent to yet another city council member and nothing more. So to make these promises as though the mayor somehow controls the entire agenda of the city council is it's an outright lie. This is why it's important to know. It's also important. I ran for county board of commissioners as well. And very often, many people can tell you that I would say, well, I doubt that any of them know what their authorities are, what their authority is, quote unquote, the scope of their authority. And very often they couldn't answer the questions. It got to the point where they changed the political forums to include questions that I had previously posed in past election cycles. Wow, right? And even in the next election cycle, a consecutive election cycle, the same candidates could not answer the same questions that had been posed by myself prior to, or by the particular, PAC that was hosting the forum. That means that they've had time to look it up. And that further means that they have not looked it up. They have no intention of looking it up. 2 election cycles go by and they still don't know. They can't even tell you the chapter. This is why it's important. It's important for those who are on the right side of justice to do it because you don't want to look foolish. You want to go into this with a respect that is, deserving of the field of law, because the field of law does have the deserved respect as any other undertaking you would pursue. You don't just pick up one book on, car mechanics for dummies, and then self-decide, like I'm going to self-assert that I'm now a master of, repairing vehicles. It doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, even though I agree, and I have shared with you over and over and over again, Thomas Jefferson's thoughts that I believe are valid, and that we need another Constitution right now, that the Constitution and the body of laws that we've been enforcing for hundreds of years now are by force, just as Thomas Jefferson proposed in his letter, which I will read again in about 5 minutes. So it's important for those who are on the right side of justice to do this work, because I can guarantee you that those who are on the wrong side of justice, they're betting on the fact that you haven't done your work. Okay. All right. So we're going to come out of here. This is a great website. I don't even want to go to the Senate now. All right. But we're going to go over here really quickly. And we're gonna look at their makeup. Okay. I am going to do some, well, I'm going to try really quickly. We're going to move through this really fast because I want to check out that young man. I'm especially highlighting individuals that I see who are in a generation, after mine, which would mean that they would be younger than me, right? Younger than any of us who are 44 to 55-ish, right? Okay. Reason being is because I want to see you in office. This is not about Tigris McDaniel. This is about future generations. And if you're not represented, how do you expect to make the changes that you are protesting about? I've been to a million protests. I've told you this over and over again. I've helped organize them. I've organized them on my own. I've served as ombudsman for many of them. And unfortunately, we're still fighting and protesting for the same shit. It will change when we change it. And we have to change it by the vehicle of legislation. And it is unfortunate because, again, there were politicians back in the day, Thomas Jefferson being one of them, who said, hey, you can't keep this same body of laws for people 200 years from now. Are you serious? This probably won't even, half of this stuff won't even apply in 200 years. But they're doing it. And they're doing it very boldly, very flagrantly, very confidently. And to go head to that, even if you don't want to, you're like, I don't want to play by the rules. I want to rebel. We want to do it this way. As you've seen, unfortunately, right now, we can't just go in and take over the White House. Remember, that's a coup because they're gonna apply the current laws for that. And most of us, we don't want to do it by militarized force. We don't want to do it by war. We don't want to do it by taking lives. We want to do it in a civil way. And if you want to do it in a civil way, unfortunately, just standing on the steps of a federal building and asserting that this is what's right, that is not enough. I would love for it to be enough, but it is not factually enough. All right, come on. All right, here we go. So let's count them up because there's only a few, right? I think it was 34? There's one, where is it? Let's go back. No, it's on the first. Yeah, 34 Senate members, 163 House. All right, here we go. Go back to the Senate. Where was it? Nope. Here we go. All right, back. Members. It didn't look like that was a count, but it was. Okay, here we go. Democrat, 1, 2. And this makes a big difference too. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so they definitely have a Republican majority for Senate. And unfortunately, again, the majority is also Caucasian white men, right? And unfortunately, the overtone of the Republican Party, even right now, we're seeing it right now, is that of white racist America. And that's a problem, right? That's a problem. Okay. We do see, it appears to be 2 African Americans, 1 man, 1 woman. I don't want to make assumptions about someone's ethnic background, but she appears to be maybe of Indian descent. I'm not sure. She might be of Latin descent. She might be from the Dominican Republic. Who knows? I'm not sure. We can't tell by her name, Barbara Ann Washington. And he also looks to be part of the diverse cultures that we want to see in legislative seats, right? Okay. He looks like he might be young, but maybe 30-ish young, and not so much as maybe 20 young, but I'm not sure. Again, she also looks to be a part of the diverse culture that we want to see. I cannot tell if she is African American or of a different ethnic group. Okay. But these are persons that you want to look further into. You do want to spend time on the other individuals as well, because also part of this truism is that, and I'll keep repeating it, I have no problem doing so, that sometimes the Republican is not on the side of the wrong side of justice. They're on the right side of justice. They just have some viewpoints. What I've seen most often is it's generally related to maybe the conservative aspect of it all. Maybe they are not in agreement with LGBT part of their rights, quote unquote, the part that is fixed or, in their Christianity or Christian beliefs, if you will. And then it would carry over for their Christian beliefs as it relates to women's rights, women's reproductive rights. But then everywhere else, they tend to agree with the democratic mindset, if you will, mostly. That's what I've seen. Please feel free to share your comments as well. All right. And let's see. Okay. So we've done that. There was one other thing I was going to do. What is this down here? Okay. So they do evidently have YouTube. So let's go on over.
Missouri Senate approved legislation providing additional resources for the state's transportation infrastructure.
Gotcha. Is this their Mosen? Yeah. So this is their YouTube channel for Missouri Senate, Mosencom. Maybe that's how they refer to it, colloquially. And so that's good to see that they do have internet presence, YouTube presence. It's very, very important. It's very important to see that they have this transparency, if you will, but you have to click around a little bit more to find it, like other websites, as opposed to the Missouri House of Representatives website, which has it right there front and center. Okay, well, this was a very interesting state to survey. Very, very interesting. I'm going to show Kevin Strickland's picture one more time. I'm going to leave it up as I read, because I believe that it is very important for you to see this image, understand that this man has been in prison for 43 years. And you'll see that they also have a button here for the Midwest Innocence Project for donations. I have no problem with having some of the donations that you send to us through Eargasm Records and this platform to support him. But our focus is making sure to serve him in one particular capacity. He specifically states in this interview that I'm going to encourage you to watch again. If you watched it, watch it again. If you haven't watched it, I'm going to again encourage you to watch it. He says he will have nothing upon his release. And of course, he's trying to be optimistic, because there's a point in his video that he expresses that he doesn't feel that he will see the light of day, if you will, and that he will instead die an innocent man in prison while awaiting for them to do the right thing, right? And he's not waiting on the Midwest Innocence Project. That's not what I'm saying. So we're not denigrating the Midwest Innocence Project. We're not denigrating the current prosecutor and the prosecutorial team. Instead, the focus, those who are in the hot seat, Supreme Court for Missouri, for the state of Missouri, and the governor, who are not taking immediate action, swift action to restore him. And that leads me to exactly the capacity that we intend to support him in. Evidently, the state of Missouri does not have the restitution provision in their, element, if you will. Well, provision, so that's kind of redundant. They don't have that provision for individuals like Kevin Strickland, who were wrongly convicted, served time, and then released, exonerated, right? They'll be exonerated and released, of course, contingent if, the right thing is done. But there is no provision for them in law that, gives them that monetary damages like in other states that we've seen, right? And he says that he will have nothing upon his release. So I want to make sure he has something, and not just a little bit of something. I want him to see that we do care about his life. We say Black Lives Matter. Let's show Kevin Strickland that his Black life matters as well. I'll reiterate this before I read this excerpt from this letter so that you understand the importance of his predicament. He was found guilty by an all-white jury, all-white male jury, intentionally so, after a mistrial. The mistrial was a result of there being one Black man on the jury who did not agree that Kevin Strickland was guilty. The prosecutor at the time mocked Kevin Strickland and told him, oh, it won't happen again for the new trial. And he used, or abused rather, the jury selection process. There are preemptive options that a lawyer has or an attorney has by which they can dismiss a juror without giving much reason. And he did that. He made sure to dismiss every possible Black juror, which resulted in the all-white jury that convicted him. He was convicted on eyewitness identification by Miss Douglas, who passed away in 2015, who repeatedly told authorities that she was not sure that it was Kevin Strickland, but that during the trial, she was intimidated by the prosecutorial team into saying that it was indeed Kevin Strickland who had committed the murder. There's more. The two individuals who committed this crime ultimately confessed some years later. Evidently, they were subject to trial, convicted, and they served evidently 10 years. Again, I'm referring to the information that I learned in the interviews. They have since been released. Kevin Strickland remains. Even more so, evidently, these two men have returned on different convictions and served those sentences and have been released, and still yet, Kevin Strickland remains in prison. Let's go to the letter. Excuse me. I'm gonna pull this over here. Just having a moment, because when you think of this man, it is terrible. Terrible what he's experienced. And we know, excuse me, that there are more. Written in 1785, I believe, by Thomas Jefferson. On similar ground, it may be proved that no society can make a perpetual constitution or even a perpetual law. The earth belongs always to the living generation. They may manage it then and what proceeds from it as they please during their usufruct. They are masters too of their own persons and consequently may govern them as they please. But persons and property make the sum of the objects of government. The Constitution and the laws of their predecessors extinguish then in their natural course with those who gave them being. This could preserve that being till it ceased to be itself and no longer. Every constitution then and every law naturally expires at the end of 19 years. If it be in force longer, it is an act of force and not of right. It may be said that the succeeding generation, exercising in fact the power of repeal, this leaves them as free as if the Constitution or law had been expressly limited to 19 years only. In the first place, this objection admits the right in proposing an equivalent. But the power of repeal is not an equivalent. It might be indeed if every form of government were so perfectly contrived that the will of the majority could always be obtained fairly and without impediment. But this is true of no form. The people cannot assemble themselves. Their representation is unequal and vicious. Various checks are opposed to every legislative proposition. Does it sound familiar, y'all? Factions get possession of the public councils. Bribery corrupts them. Personal interests led them astray from the general interests of their constituents. And other impediments arise so as to prove to every practical man that a law of limited duration is much more manageable than one which needs a repeal. Are you hearing me? If you didn't know before the pandemic, it's been on full display during the pandemic. We fight for legislation. We fight for an amendment to legislation. Then it must undergo this process. That's what he's talking about. And that process, you see it? It's not manageable because we don't have laws of limited duration. We have laws in perpetuity. And some of you don't understand that there is a part of law, very durable part of our current system of law, that also relies upon the individual opining by different jurisdictions and different judges. So each time a judge is when they have that judgeship, this is why they conduct themselves, some of them, like arrogant demigods, right? Some of them conduct, and I mean demigods, not like the political term, I mean like demigods, like they think that they have been bestowed by God this position. Maybe they think this way because, Christian principles of, well, if I have it, then fate that I am going to make fate equivalent to God, and that I should be in this seat. And therefore, everything I think is thus correct and proper and ethical. Please understand, there are lots of them that think this way. And so when they interpret, you've heard interpretation of law, when they interpret the law, and some of you say, well, how in the world can they interpret the law? Shouldn't it just be one thing? I agree with you. But remember, now part of this, I believe, was intentional. And then there's a flip side to every coin. Part of this was also inherent in the drafting of the Constitution. They drafted the Constitution to allow for amendments. It's written into the Constitution. So where there can be amendments, that means that the original body of law was not written finitely. Like, it could be expanded, it could be changed, it could be interpreted, and interpreted by different states. Remember, the onset of this corporation, this collective union, the United States of America, the states made their own governing body, their own decisions. They came together, right? Decidedly, yet still asserting their own separation as entities, state entities that could govern themselves and generally set their own bodies of law, as long as it didn't contradict the prevailing federal law. But they do it all the time. You see it. Because what? Because they have the opportunity to interpret law, and because the repeal process is sorely manageable with law that has unlimited duration. I am Tiger Sydney Acute McDaniel, your host of Evolve Weekly. Please do join me again, and please consider helping us help Kevin Strickland. Have a wonderful week.